Alright, after RMC, it's time for the Herta, the first 5-star unit of 3.0, and our second Emanator after Akron. And I gotta say, I hate her kit, man. She literally has a wall of text for her kit design. But more text means more damage, I guess. As usual, we first start with a brief explanation of her kit, followed by her Eidolons, some build options, proper rotations, and finally, Synergies. So leave a like if you find this video helpful, and let's get started. Let's talk about lootbar.gg, the best top-up platform for your favorite games like Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, and now Zenless Zone Zero. It provides some crazy discounts on every item there is, and it's super easy to use. Just go to lootbar.gg, select Honkai Star Rail or whatever game you play, select your preferred pack, and then type your UID, select your server, and click on top up now. With just a few clicks, you can get your hands on some awesome deals. Lootbar also has tons of positive reviews, and all the purchase is done through official Hoyoverse routing channels, making it a super safe option. Not only that, some of your favorite content creators, including me, uses Lootbar for every in-game purchase. So just click on the link in the description or in the pinned comment and check out lootbar.gg right now. So the new Herta, she's a 5-star ice unit following the path of erudition. She plays as a main damage dealer with similar mechanics to Akron, as she wants to be played with another erudition unit in her team, and she gets a huge damage boost from it. Looking at her base stats, similar to most erudition units, she has a very low HP, pretty high attack, low defense and speed, with a quite high 220 energy cost ultimate. Looking at her traces, her basic attack deals ice damage to a single target. For her skill, she first deals ice damage to a single enemy and inflicts 1 stack of interpretation. After that, deals ice damage to adjacent targets. And this effect can repeat 2 times. And this is the confusing part about Herta's kit, as most players won't understand this attack and why this attack makes her better than any other erudition unit in the game. So here I have a simple visual representation. Let's say we have 5 enemies on the field. When Herta uses her skill, it has 3 instances of damage. First, it will deal damage only to the main target. That's the first instance. Next, she will do a blast attack, dealing damage to the middle and the adjacent enemies. That's the second instance of damage. And finally, she will make the adjacent targets as the main one, and again deal blast damage, this time dealing damage to the last 2 enemies as well. And now, since the middle one is adjacent to both the current main targets, it gets hit twice. So if we sum it all up, the middle target gets hit 4 times, the adjacent ones get hit 2 times, and the last one gets hit once. So this is basically like a domino effect, and that's pretty much how Herta's most attacks work. And why this is better than any other erudition units? That's because usually erudition units deal the same amount of damage to all the enemies on the field, which results in low HP enemies taking more damage than their HP and the main boss taking less damage than what it needs. But Herta's attacks can focus on the main boss. Even as an erudition unit, she has the qualities of a destruction unit, exactly what you expect from an Emanator. Now she also has an enhanced skill, which isn't anything different from a normal skill, except higher multipliers of course. The only thing that's different here is that after all that domino effect, she now deals a final AoE damage to all the enemies at once. And that's all. But how does she get this enhanced skill? Well, that is in her ultimate, which first rearranges all the interpretation stacks, mostly focusing on elite or boss level enemies, and then deals AoE ice damage to all enemies. Also, when using her ultimate, she gets a huge attack boost for 3 turns and gains 1 stack of inspiration, which can stack up to 4 times. And when she has inspiration stacks, her skill is enhanced. Note that this inspiration stack is different from the interpretation stacks from both of her skills. Next is her talent, which is all about the interpretation stacks that we have talked about up till now. When enemies enter battle, Herta inflicts 1 stack of interpretation on them. At the start of each wave, she inflicts 25 stacks of interpretation on a random target, but she prioritizes elite or boss level enemies. And when using enhanced skill on any target, if that target has interpretation stacks on them, then each stack increases the damage multiplier of that attack. And now if there is one more erudition unit present in the team, the damage multiplier increase percentage gets doubled. Basically saying always play Herta with another erudition unit on the team. Kinda how Akron wants 2 other Nihility units. But since Herta wants just 1 other erudition unit, this makes her a bit more flexible than Akron. Finally, interpretation can stack up to 42 times. And after using enhanced skill, it resets all the stacks to 1. Also, after any enemy gets defeated, all the remaining interpretation stacks gets transferred to the remaining enemies. All in all, it's all about stacking interpretation stacks as much as you can, and then just nuke the whole battlefield with her enhanced skill. Lastly, her technique. Using it will increase Herta's attack at the start of the next battle, lasting for 2 turns. And if there are basic treasures in the current map, using technique will mark up to 3 basic treasures locations. Then there is also the simulated universe effect, which should be obvious, as this is Herta we are talking about. After entering battle by using her technique in the simulated universe, deals true damage equal to 99% of the target's max HP to low level enemies, and true damage equal to 30% of the target's max HP to the enemy targets at elite level and above. So it's like a big hit of damage at the start. But here Akron might be better because she lets you skip the whole battle, but she cannot do that for boss enemies, which Herta can do. So I guess it's better than Akron. In terms of trace level up priority, I would recommend leveling up her talent and her skill first, as both contains the core mechanics of Herta's damage. Then you can level up her ultimate, and lastly her basic attack, which you can leave at level 1, as you won't ever be using it in battle anyways. Now let's look at Herta's passives, and my god, these two have a bunch of text. Her first passive, when any ally target attacks, inflicts 1 stack of interpretation on the enemy target. Nice way to stack up interpretation fast. Also, after attacking, for every 1 target hit by this attack, regenerates 3 fixed energy for the Herta, counting up to a maximum of 5 targets, so at most 15 energy. And this is from all the allies. So even though she has a whopping 220 energy cost ultimate, her teammates can help her get more energy. And finally, when using enhanced skill on a target that has 42 stacks of interpretation, increases ice damage dealt by the Herta by 50% until the end of this attack. So even more damage. Nice. Her second passive, when entering battle, if the team has 2 or more erudition units, then increase all allies crit damage by 80%, which is super awesome, as she can also buff her teammates. Also calculates at least 3 targets when the first passive calculates all the energy gain, which basically means if there is only 1 target on the field, hitting that target should only generate 3 energy for the Herta. But with this passive, even with a single target, Herta will gain at least 9 energy when any ally hits that target. Finally, when attacking, applies 1 stack of interpretation to the target that has the highest current interpretation stacks, and additionally applies 2 stacks of interpretation if the attacker is an erudition unit. So more reasons to always play Herta with a second erudition unit on the field. Lastly, her third passive. For every 1 stack of interpretation inflicted on enemy targets, the Herta gains 1 stack of answer, up to 99 stacks. And when using ultimate, every stack of answer increases the ultimate damage multiplier by 1%. So now with this, even her ultimate is a damage nuke. For her bonus stats, after maxing out her traces, the Herta gains 22.4% ice damage, 18% attack, and 5 speed. And all of these are really important for a damage dealer like the Herta. Alright, Eidolons are next. Though she's pretty broken at E0, some Eidolons of her can make her even better. The Herta's E1, when enhanced skill calculates interpretation, additionally calculates 50% of the interpretation stacks on the 1 target that has the current highest stacks, so basically getting to higher stacks faster, resulting in more damage. Also, when using enhanced skill to reset interpretation stacks, resets the stacks to 15 instead of 1. So she not only gets to higher stacks faster, she also starts at 15 instead of 1. Awesome. For E2, if enemy interpretation reaches 42, when stacks are applied or transferred to them, which basically means the moment an enemy reaches 42 stacks, or if any enemy dies and gets their stacks transferred to another enemy, and then that enemy reaches 42 stacks, then the Herta instantly gains 1 stack of inspiration. Also, when using enhanced skill, the Herta's action advances by 35%. This is in the same level as units like Akron and Firefly, where they get more actions or ultimates at E2, resulting in a huge damage increase. Herta's E4 increases the speed of all erudition units on the team by 12%. Nice, but kind of whatever. Lastly, her E6. Herta's Ice Rest penetration is increased by 20%, and she gets her ultimate damage multiplier increased based on the number of enemies on the field, and the increase is reversed. So like if there are 3 or more enemies, the multiplier increase is like 140%. If there are 2 enemies, the increase is 250%, and for 1 target, the increase is 400%. Basically leveling her damage across every type of challenge. Let it be pure fiction, with a loss of enemies, or Epoch Shadow with a single boss. But then again, this is E6. She should already be able to one-cycle everything in the game at this point. Overall, all her Eidolons are great, except her E4 I guess. But as I said, her Eidolons are similar to Firefly and Akron, where her E1 is great, but if you get her up to E2, then she becomes broken as hell. But regardless, she's perfectly fine at E0. I've been ordering every single endgame content for a long time now, and with all E0 units. So if she's not your favorite character, I would recommend saving all your J's for future units. By the way, if you're enjoying the content, please consider subscribing, as it does help this channel grow and motivates me to make more content for you guys. Now let's talk builds. First is her Lightcone options. Of course, her best in slot is going to be her signature. It provides crit rate and both skill and ultimate damage boost. And this is great because Herta is the first 5-star erudition unit that heavily focuses on skill damage. Everyone else either have follow-up attacks or just focus on ultimates. Also, this Lightcone recovers 1 skill point when the wearer uses their ultimate, and that's really important because Herta is going to be using her skill a lot. And because she gets her action advance right after she uses her ultimate, kinda like Firefly, she's actually a very skill point heavy unit. And this Lightcone is like Firefly's E1, which fixes her skill point issues. And the same happens with Herta. Her signature not only increases her damage, it also helps with her skill point needs. For other alternatives, the only 2 5-star that I'm gonna mention here are gonna be Himeko's signature and the Herta store Lightcone. Because of the same reason I just mentioned. She is very unique as her main source of damage is her skill, which is different from her other erudition units. That aside, Himeko's signature is close to her second best, especially in places where there are a lot of enemies on the field. As for the Herta store Lightcone, It's also pretty similar to Himiko's. This also has the condition of having more enemies on the field, but this one is more easier to get full benefit from, because the weakness break part of Himiko's Lightcone is pretty inconsistent, so in terms of just consistency, this one is better. Also, the extra speed is really nice, that not a lot of players talk about. And of course, both of these two works wonders in Pure Fiction, as there are a lot of enemies on the field. For her best 4 stars, here we start to get something nice. The Battle Pass Lightcone, today is another peaceful day, at S5 is the most universal second best Lightcone for the Herta. This Lightcone increases all type damage based on the ultimate cost, and since Herta has 220 cost ultimate, she can easily trigger the passive. And since this is all type damage, it doesn't have any issue working fine in all type of endgame content. But this is still Battle Pass, and not every player will have this. Also, if you are talking about S1 value, then the Herta Store Lightcone or Himeko Lightcone will perform better. And lastly, we have 2 other 4 stars. First is going to be Genius's Repose. It increases attack and crit damage. And then we have Breakfast, which also increases attack. Both of these have a condition of defeating enemies, so it's not as consistent as the Battle Pass Lightcone, but they are still usable if you don't have other options. Here I have a full damage chart comparing all the Lightcones that I just mentioned. The signature is a bit different from other Lightcones because its value is much higher than it looks in this chart. That Lightcone not only increases her damage by a lot, but also helps with her skill point needs, making her much easier to play. And also, to answer the question, which is better between her signature Lightcone or her E1, I'm gonna recommend her Lightcone first. Her E1 is great, but it's her E2 that completely changes her damage output, and her Lightcone has the utility that Herta needs. After that, her best Relics. The 4-piece Scholar Lost in Erudition set is going to be her best in slot. It increases crit rate and increases skill and ultimate damage, similar to Herta's signature Lightcone. And this set is already in the game for you to farm. So most of you guys, or at least the ones who pull for Sunday, should already have a few pieces ready for her. But if not, you can also use the Glacier set, which is actually pretty decent on her, but just as I said in my RMC video, who farms this domain anyways? Lastly, if you're a brand new player and don't have anything, you can use any 2-piece combos of attack plus any damage type set, until you farm at least a usable 4-piece Scholar set. For her Ornaments, the best is going to be the Izumo set. This set is made for damage dealers who wants the second DPS of the same path like Akron. It increases attack and crit rate, which Herta needs as she already gets a ton of crit damage from her passives. Other than that, there are 2 other options. One is going to be the Arena set, which increases crit rate and skill damage, and the other one is going to be the Sigonia set, which gives a ton of crit damage. But this one works better in Pure Fiction, and not so good in other places, and Herta wants crit rate more than crit damage. The Izumo set is definitely the best option, but both Sigonia set and the Arena set works fine as well. For her stats, here's a build for reference. Everything here is calculated with F2P Lightcones and the lowest of substat rolls. For main stats on each pieces, use a crit rate body as she already gets a ton of crit damage from her passives, use a speed boot as she also gets a huge attack boost from her ultimate, an ice damage sphere, and an attack percentage rope. Even though she does have a very high energy cost ultimate, she does get a lot of energy from her teammates, so using an ERR rope won't be as effective. For an endgame stat goal, try to go above 3.2k attack, at least 70% crit rate, and about 120% crit damage with the standard 134 speed for damage dealers. These stats shouldn't be as hard to achieve with a crit rate body piece, and her best Relic set passives. As for the speed, just with a speed boot and her extra 5 speed from her stat bonuses, you are already at 129 speed. Just get 5 more speed from substats, and you're good to go. Now for her rotations. As a damage dealer, you only want to focus on dealing as much damage as you can. Always use her skill and ultimate and never her basic attack. Also, you don't have to worry about skill points on her. That's what her teammates are for. Always use her enhanced skill whenever it's available, and that's just how you play Herta. But there is something we can discuss. We can someone calculate the average number of turns it would take to get her ultimate back, which then enhances her skill. Here's a chart showing a 3-turn ultimate rotation, with 2 DPSs, 1 support and 1 sustain. This can be a simple representation of how a Herta team works, and how her first passive triggers. The 2 erudition DPSs will always hit multiple times, so they will always generate 15 energy for Herta. As for the support and sustain, thanks to Herta's second passive, they will always guarantee at least 9 energy. So in total, you should at the very least get her enhanced skill every 3 turns. And I'm saying at the very least because I did not count any extra energy that she might gain from defeating enemies or getting hit by them. Also, Herta gets to take action immediately right after using her ultimate, so she can use 2 skills in 1 turn. So combining all this, it's safe to assume that an E0 Herta should be able to get her ultimate and through that her enhanced skill every 2 to 3 turns. And then you just repeat. Finally, her synergies. Now Herta wants to be played with another erudition unit in her team. So what are the best characters for that spot? The best unit for that role is going to be Jade. She not only deals insane damage herself, but can also provide damage and speed buff to Herta. She currently has the best synergy with her. One of the more important facts is that Jade is SP positive. If you do not plan to pull for Herta's signature Lightcone, then Jade can be a good skill point generator for her. And they both benefit from each other. Herta gets an awesome sub DPS who can also buff her, and Jade can now perform well outside of Pure Fiction. Speaking of Pure Fiction, both the 4-star Herta or Himeko are going to be her go-to teammates for Pure Fiction if you don't have Jade. You can also use Argenti here, but since he needs to use her skill constantly, you might face some SP management issues if you don't have her signature Lightcone. For her best F2P teammate, Serval with an ERA rope is going to be her best friend, especially if you have Serval's E2. Then with her constant AoE ultimates, she will easily be able to stack up Herta's interpretation stacks, and also generate a ton of energy for her. If you are just starting, and are not planning to pull for Jade, then an E2 Serval is going to be Herta's best teammate. Next, for the support or damage amplifier role, we have a couple of options. The best and premium unit is going to be Robin. She heavily buffs attack and crit damage, and also provides team-wide action advance. She is the current best team-wide support in the game. But if you don't have her, then you can also use the upcoming Remembrance MC. He can provide the unique 2 damage buff to the Herta, and he can also provide team-wide crit damage boost. So definitely a great unit for a Herta team. You can also use Pella here. She can inflict defense down onto the enemies. Both Pella and RMC works fine in a Herta team, but RMC is more SP friendly than Pella. So if you don't have Herta's signature Lightcone, then just use the RMC. Then again, Robin is still the best option. Lastly, for sustain units, there are 3 premium options that you can use in a Herta team: Lingsha, Aventurine, and Huohuo. Both Lingsha and Aventurine pair super well with Robin. Both have AoE follow-up attacks that can help generate energy for both Herta and Robin, and they can stack interpretation stacks faster than any other sustain. Huohuo on the other hand is only here for her ultimate that can provide energy for Herta. The extra attack buff can be awesome, but with Herta's own ultimate that gives her a huge attack buff, plus Robin's ultimate, there is already a ton of attack buff for Herta, and more of the same buff can lead to some diminishing returns. Lastly, for an F2P team, Gallagher is your best option. With high speed and multiplication Lightcone, Gallagher is a beast in terms of SP generation, and for someone without Herta's signature Lightcone or Jade, those extra skill points helps a lot. Finally, taking all that info, here is how a simple Herta team will look like. First is Herta, of course, then we have our second erudition unit. Jade is obviously the best, but both Himeko and the 4-star Herta are also fine, with Serval being the best F2P option. Then we have supports. Robin is at the top, with RMC and Pella as alternatives. And finally for sustains, again both Lingsha and Aventurine pair super well with Robin, so use them if you can. Huohuo is also fine, and Gallagher the best F2P option. And that's basically how you build a team for the Herta. If you guys have any other ideas, you can share them in the comments. Overall, the Herta being another Emanator is going to be a top tier DPS right on her release. Her teams does require some premium units, but you can still play her without them. As a pure damage dealer, I wouldn't say she's a must pull, especially with all the new units coming in future patches, but if you really like her design, then she's absolutely worth your jades. And that is going to be it for the Herta guide. If you have any further questions, leave them in the comments, or you can just ask me directly whenever I'm live, and I'll try my best to answer them. Like and sub if you enjoy my content. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.